Jake, it's been a little bit. I know you spent the summer trying to work out a fight at MSG. Didn't end up happening. Any regrets about how all that stuff went down?
No, I think it just pissed me off, like people wasting my time. But I'm excited to have like a real professional who will show up, make weight, not fake an injury, not fake a visa thing. So this is exciting, and I know that my training camp now will be put to use. But there's a blessing in disguise, right? Because Hasim Rahman was a southpaw, and so we started training for a southpaw. So we got a couple extra months of training for southpaws, and this will be my first time going up against one. So that was definitely a blessing in disguise in preparation for Anderson.
Do you wish you did anything different? Maybe didn't replace Tommy Fury with Rahman or anything like that?
Yeah, I wish I would have never gave Hasim this platform because like the kid's like damn near famous now. It's crazy how famous I make these people, and he didn't even have to fight me. So it's crazy. But yeah, we gave like basically criminals an opportunity and scam artists, and they scammed us. So wish we wouldn't have done that, and really wish that I would have just done this fight earlier in the year so that I could have probably done 3 fights this year. But now here we are, October 29th. I'll get one in, and I'm grateful for that.
Press conference with Anderson was like really light. Like you guys, redid the photo from years ago with you and Logan and Anderson. Totally different than most of your other press conferences have been. What was that like?
I thought it was cool, man. And it all comes down to the opponent. I didn't have respect for my opponents, and they came in talking. They came in. All of them were the ones calling me out. So it was cool to just be up there and to be chill and to be more myself. But when things get hostile, I sort of have to get hostile. And to me, that press conference was the most fun one yet. And it's cool to see. But I will say, when like all the fun aside, when we got into the face-off, you see a different Anderson Silva than the one who's like up there on stage having a jolly time. That's the Spider Anderson that I saw on that face-off, and you can tell he's got that killer in him, 100%.
That's actually what I wanted to ask you next because you had the kind of fun, light-hearted press conference, and then at the end of it, you got to face off with Anderson Silva, a guy that has been like an idol for you, a guy that you were a fan of. What was that experience like looking into his eyes? That's got to be crazy. Like that's the guy that you watched fight Chael and all these legends.
Yeah, it was weird, but it felt right. It felt like this was destined to happen, and like that this was meant to happen, and it was a surreal moment for sure. I never thought I'd be here. I never thought this would play out like this, and I never thought I'd be fighting one of my idols. Definitely not.
Is this the toughest fight you think so far for you? I mean, I know Anderson is not a quote-unquote pro boxer, at least the kind that everyone wants you to fight. It seems like the critics want you to fight. But he did a lot more in the UFC than Tyron Woodley did. I know he's older now, but he's won some pro boxing fights recently.
Yeah, I think he's definitely the most skilled boxer I've gone up against yet, and he just beat former world champion Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., schooled him for 8 rounds. And so if I were to fight Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., everyone would be like, oh, finally he's fighting a former world champion pro boxer. But guess what? Anderson beat the shit out of the dude. So this is definitely the hardest fight, and he has so much experience. He's been on the big stage so many times. That's not going to affect him. So really what's great about this fight is whoever has the most skill will win.
You've obviously watched a lot of Anderson fights as a fan. You know that they can get a little wacky. He can do some weird stuff. He can clown his opponent, taunt. I mean, you've seen all his fights, I imagine. Are you prepared for that kind of like odd stuff happening?
For sure. And I'll give it right back to him, just like Israel did. And I think that throws him off when he starts to taunt and then his opponent starts to taunt. He's not gonna know what to do. I don't think he expects that from me. But I'm just as comfortable in there as him, in my opinion, especially in the boxing ring. So if he's doing all of this, I'm not going to go and do that. I'll fight my fight on my terms, and that's how it'll be. I'm going to be in control all 8 rounds until I get the knockout.
A lot of people said that, you didn't want this fight. I know Dana White said that, you wouldn't do this fight. What does this fight characterize for you in terms of this point in your career? Because maybe he's not the experienced pro boxer, and he is a guy that is older, but he has kind of rehabilitated himself in the boxing ring lately.
For me, as crazy as it sounds, this is my first big fight. All the other fights, are somewhat big names, but no one that's a superstar. And Anderson's a superstar. So, in terms of hype and pay-per-views and media attention, this is the biggest fight. And finally, I don't have to do all of the promoting. He's bringing a ton of pay-per-view buys. I'm bringing a ton of pay-per-view buys, and it's just really exciting. It's a step up. And I don't get why people ever thought like, oh, Jake Paul doesn't want to take this fight. I said for the past year and a half, who's on your hit list? Anderson, all these guys. I named him every single time on the hit list. Nate Diaz, Tommy Fury, KSI, blah, blah, blah. He was always on the hit list. So I don't get why people didn't think I want this fight. I think they maybe think that when I say those hit lists that I'm joking. But time will prove that I will check off everyone on that hit list.
You just mentioned Nate Diaz. He just had his, the final fight on his UFC contract a couple of days ago in Las Vegas, beat Tony Ferguson. Is that, now that he's out of contract officially, and you can talk a little bit more about it, is that a fight that we're going to see down the line, you and Nate?
We will see. We will see. I think there's a lot of hurdles that he probably has to get through, like even getting out of his contract probably. I don't know all the details. And then there's hurdles I have to jump through, and one of those hurdles is a massive one in Anderson Silva. So I'm focused on October 29th. But I do in the back of my head want that fight, and I think the fans want that fight.
So you're not really thinking about it yet, but it's something that...
I definitely use all the potential fights that could happen in my career as motivation. I want to have a long career. And so when I'm in the gym, I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to be doing this for 3, 4, 5 more years. I need to work extremely hard, and this isn't just like a short-term thing for me. So I always think about all the people who are out there who want to beat me, who want to fight me. And I use them training, and probably in that exact same moment, between all the opponents combined, there's always probably someone training at the same time as me. And will I train harder than them? And when we fight, I will have worked harder.
Anderson said something interesting at the press conference. He said that people should respect you because you're the one who has kind of like opened up the door for combat sports to be more imaginative and to have these ideas about what fights can be instead of just being in one promotion. Nate Diaz is out of contract. Francis Ngannou is someone who's looking to go box. He's been very public about that. What do you think about that stuff? And do you think that you've played a factor in some of those dominoes falling?
Yeah, for sure. I've definitely added to it, and I think it's just reimagining the sport and giving people unique fights that are super interesting. Even all these influencer fights, as much as people like to talk about them, they're so entertaining because you just see who has a bigger heart, and they're out there swinging for their lives. They don't necessarily know, the best technique, but you see who wants it more. And I think that's the beautiful thing about this sport, is finding out who has the heart of a lion. And these crossover fights, NFL players, NBA players, it's interesting, and it's done amazing things for the sport. So many people who weren't interested before are now interested, and I think this is only the start, and this Anderson Silva fight's a step in the right direction, and hopefully we can keep on going and make these events bigger and bigger.
It's almost like a whole new genre of combat sports, right? Where people from different sports, different combat sports, YouTubers, influencers can come together and be in like one stage.
No, exactly, and I think some of the boxing purists don't like it, but to me it's entertaining, and I always have found success in doing things that I am passionate about, and clearly this different fan base needed that differentiation to be drawn into the sport, because the high level fighters who are so good at fighting, blah, blah, but no one really knows who they are. It wasn't interesting. People want to feel connected to that person in the ring, and that's really what we've done with the sport.
Last question, the Anderson fight. I've heard people like run the gamut from, of course, Anderson is gonna, school this kid, it's Anderson Silva, to the opposite spectrum, like, Jake Paul is in his mid-20s and Anderson is almost 50. Of course, Jake Paul is gonna win. What are your thoughts on that? And where is your head at? Because you've watched Anderson for a long time.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be a very tough fight in the beginning, but I will slowly be able to get him to retreat once he feels my power. And I got some secret punches for him lined up that have been dropping my sparring partners, and I actually love going up against southpaws. It's almost become my favorite thing, even more so than fighting orthodox fighters. So it'll be a tough fight in the beginning, but I'll slowly pick him apart and create an opening and knock him out. I'm a knockout artist. That's what I do. I set up my opponents, get them feeling comfortable, get them in the exact spot that I want, and then put them away.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.